Hello dear listeners, DW here. My guest today, Joe, a Kiwi friend who's spent a fair bit of time in Australia, shares his views on cinema. And we talk about it, I guess, to get his sort of outsider perspective, but also his kind of insider perspective too, if that makes sense. Just a correction that at one point I stupidly say Sam Worthington when I actually met Chris Hemsworth, because apparently my brain doesn't always work very well. Otherwise, enjoy and spoilers ahead. Hello Joe, welcome to the show. You are here for the first time. Congratulations. How does it feel?
Feels okay.
Okay. Okay is okay. Okay is a good start. Today we're going to have a bit of a chat about Australian cinema, and the reason I ask you that is because you've got kind of one foot in a couple of different parts of the world. So you've spent, is it fair to say you spent a fair bit of time in Australia and New Zealand throughout your life, and therefore have interacted with cinema kind of from the inside but also the outside? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think it's about 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because certainly growing up, I had 100% of my experience here, so it's just good to get different voices involved, you know. So here's the question that we have to answer, and we can't leave until we've answered it. Not really, because we probably won't get there. What is Australian cinema, or what makes Australian films work, or are there any common threads, I suppose? So I thought we might just pick at a few threads across time. We're a pretty similar age, so we can just pick a few films through our experiences, and maybe we find something. And if not, that's fine, because it's about the journey rather than the destination, I suppose. What's the first Australian film you remember seeing?
Probably Crocodile Hunter. Crocodile Dundee.
Crocodile Dundee. I was going to
No,
say.
Crocodile Hunter, very different film.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen that one actually.
Okay,
The Steve Irwin one, right?
So the first Crocodile Dundee.
The Crocodile Dundee, yeah.
Okay, and I'm guessing you've seen the second one at some point in your life.
Yes.
Right. So, you enjoyed it, I assume. And
definitely. I remember seeing it as a kid.
It was immensely popular.
Yeah.
The second one was pretty successful too. You remember they made a third one?
I do remember they made a third one, but I can't remember.
That's good.
The storyline of that one.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Even I think the people involved have basically said it's okay to forget it. Dundee in LA or something was called.
He's older though, is he?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Like it was.
Well, a lot older.
Yeah. It was at least 10 years after, probably 15 years after the second one. It's very forgettable, but the first two, they're pretty iconic, and I suppose that was maybe the first time Australian cinema went, especially to the US.
Global.
Globally, but keeping in mind for context, we're talking the 80s here. That was still a time, and even into the 90s, where the North American box office was everything.
Yeah.
If you sold there, it didn't matter if you sold elsewhere. Whereas these days, movies are so expensive, even American films need the international market.
Yeah.
Whereas there were plenty of movies that, you remember the 90s, you had, Harrison Ford in Air Force One and all these kinds of movies, very much for the American market. But if you only spent 20, 30, 40 million, which was still a modest budget for the time, but you could easily recoup the money in the North American market and you were fine. Hence, breaking into the North American market was everything.
Yep.
And Crocodile Dundee did that plentifully. So I think that was it. And Paul Hogan, of course, became the ambassador for Australia, for the tourism ambassador, not the the political ambassador. Yeah. Now, that would have been interesting. So, it really was sort of a watershed moment for Australian cinema. But we never really followed it up. And actually, let's pull on this thread for a moment. Australian films for the American market. I think of Crocodile Dundee 1 and 2. I think of Australia starring Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman.
And Crocodile Hunter. Or maybe getting the name wrong, the Steve Irwin film. It had some other longer title. I think.
Gee, that's
Collision Course or something.
Oh, wow. You just blew my mind. I remember that. Yeah, and that's the kind of movie, that's a novelty effect, obviously.
That is for the American market. If there's anything that's for Americans.
Yes. But it's interesting though, isn't it? Because Crocodile Dundee was very successful. Not sure about Crocodile Hunter. Australia was not. It made money, but it was very expensive. It was the most expensive Australian film. I think it still is. I remember it being something like 150-something million, even when you take the tax credits into account. Mm-hmm. So you imagine that with the actual cost and promotion, they probably spent over 200 million, which for an Australian film, 15 years ago, was extraordinary. So they had to get the American market, and didn't, or not especially well.
Yeah.
Why? Why did Crocodile Dundee work in Australia not?
Well, I feel as though Australia wasn't... it showcased Australia, but it wasn't from an Australian... Didn't have the Australian vibe. It was basically American. It was Australia made by Americans. That's how I view the movie Australia.
That's a really good point. I think you're spot on, because technically you've got 2 Australian leads, you've got an Australian director, Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah.
But they were making it with American money, with an American sensibility. And I mean, Crocodile Dundee was to an extent, but the first 45 minutes or so of that movie is in Australia.
Yeah.
They went to the Northern Territory, they filmed there.
Yeah. You
get the sense that everybody involved is from there, or at least understands what they're doing. There was an authenticity to it.
Yes.
Australia, I would argue, has no authenticity.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
And green screen. Baz Luhrmann loves the green screen. You notice that? He, not in all his films, but I remember watching The Great Gatsby, which is obviously not an Australian film, despite the director. And I remember seeing, they just have these big panning shots and green screen in this. And it kind of worked in that, because that's all about larger than life, the Roaring '20s, and it's thematically appropriate, even if it looked a little bit... I'm not a big fan of overuse of green screen. But Australian films are not about, look at our special effects, look at this, look at that. That's American. So it feels like they saw that bud of that Americanism and said, let's do that. We don't really do that, do we?
No. I think Australia was like wanting to experience Australia in the outback, but instead you're going to a museum.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? Do you remember the Crocodile Dundee tourism ad? Where you had the son of Dundee, and he gets halfway through and he goes, wait a minute, this isn't a movie, is it? This is just an ad for Australia.
Yeah, actually I do.
Sam Worthington goes, yeah, actually this is an ad. Because he spends the whole time going, look at these beautiful beaches, look at this, look at that. It's something else in the guise. And because you know what they were trying to do. Have you ever watched Gone with the Wind?
Actually, no, I don't think so.
I only watched it for the first time last year. Australia was trying to be Gone with the Wind. It was an epic.
Yeah.
And for someone who, I can tell you, I've seen both, it even hits some of the same story points at the same times. And, set during World War II. Gone with the Wind, of course, is set during war. There's war themes there. So Gone with the Wind is a quintessentially American thing. The American epic.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as an Australian epic. We don't do epic. And you could argue that's because we've never had the budget. But I think there is something about, off mic you mentioned a word before, understated. There's something understated about Australian cinema.
Yeah.
Is that who we are? Australians are understated, or at least were in the era we're talking?
Well, I think in contrast to America, definitely.
Because the American exceptionalism, of course, is all about look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
And if Australians do that, we're doing that for mockery. Generally.
Yeah. It's not the culture, is it?
No.
Although I feel Australia suffers from influences from America.
Yeah.
Culturally.
Suffers is probably the right word.
Yeah.
We're becoming a little bit more American. I think we are a little bit more than, say, 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, there's an interesting point. Becoming a bit more American, although there is a bit of anti-American sentiment.
Yep.
That's an understatement. There I go again, being understated. Would an Australian epic work today?
I don't know. What sort of story would you be thinking in an Australian epic?
Yeah, I know, because you can go back to things like World War II, you can go back to the colonial era, but there was, what was it? There was an Australian sci-fi series, like a big budget sci-fi series of films. The fact that I can't even remember the name says something, only a few years ago. I've forgotten now. So you could take something that got that Australian the building blocks, but isn't quintessentially Australian. Lord of the Rings isn't inherently Kiwi, for example.
Yeah. I guess the closest you get is maybe Mad Max. If you wanted to maybe, start, I don't know, start from the beginning or scope out a whole...
Yeah, make a world and make it Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what the first film was doing on a very low budget. It was saying this is the world, seeing it through the lens of these characters.
Yeah.
Where things are obviously in decay. There's a point, like Mad Max is probably the biggest Australian franchise as far as longevity and scale. Like the last two Mad Max films were big.
Yeah.
They were over $100 million. You go back to the original trilogy and they were not especially big budget. The third one had a bit. Incidentally, I've still not sat through Beyond Thunderdome. I've tried twice. I fell asleep twice.
Okay.
I cannot get through that movie. It's atrocious. It's the first third is great, and then when they go beyond Thunderdome, it becomes a children's adventure where he finds kids in a Qantas plane in the desert, and then they play some goofy music, and it feels like, do you remember Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams in Hook about the same time?
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw that in the cinema.
Yeah. It's a good film.
Yeah.
Apparently it didn't do well at the time. I think people are mad. It was a great film as a kid anyway. It felt like that. Like, you don't go to Mad Max to see that. And that's what the last last 2/3, I think, of Beyond Thunderdome is. But I can't get through it.
Yeah. Went from somewhere dark and, difficult to, I don't know what you call...
lighthearted, I guess.
Yeah.
Mad Max is not the world you create to be lighthearted.
No.
But, I guess the point is it didn't have the scale that we're still talking about. I don't know if the third one was especially successful. The first two were. But you go back and watch the second one, and it was still pretty low-key. Like, when you compare to excessive films of the 80s, it was pretty low-key. Mm-hmm. Damn impressive, though. Like the chase scenes and everything. Mm-hmm. Terrifying to watch, like the stuff people were getting up to. Because it's important to remember the first Mad Max was basically a 70s exploitation film. That's the era it comes from, and George Miller's spoken about that too. Like he was channeling that 70s rebel energy, and that's not an epic world-building film. That was just a taste of this world.
Yeah.
And then let's see how rough it is, and then see where it takes us. And it feels like the last ones have a very different feel to it.
Potentially, that's trying to reach that American market,
Yeah, because the first couple of films, I don't think the first trilogy even, I don't know if they were intentionally trying to get the American market, or at least that wasn't their primary focus.
Yeah.
It kind of happened by happy coincidence. And you ask most Americans of certainly Gen X, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, it's the second one, the Road Warrior." They remember that one. But a lot of them saw the first. I was surprised. I never saw the first one growing up.
Yeah.
I think it was R-rated, or AO as it was called back then. So whereas the second one was a little gentler.
Yeah.
Only slightly, mind you. You still see someone's fingers cut off by a boomerang. So yeah, they're successful. There's something Australian about that first trilogy. There's something understated about that trilogy. Dundee is not so... It feels understated until they go to New York. But I guess there's still something self-deprecating about it. The main character...
the main character basically carries that Australian essence through the films, I think.
He is Australia at the time. Or at least how we wanted to see ourselves.
Yeah.
Like the rough... We can handle the outback. Yeah. I don't think many Australians in the 80s could. No. We were suburbanites by then, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so the understated nature. I'm remembering a film. Oh, now this is annoying. If I thought of this earlier, I would have looked it up. There was a bloke who, back before our era, he probably did his exploits in the maybe 70s or early 80s, and he was a marathon runner. He'd do these long extent, where you run around Australia, or you do thousands of kilometre runs. And he's this quiet farmer. And he was this funny little character. Yeah, he didn't want to be a star, but people would go, "Let's interview you because he was in his 60s and he did thousands of kilometres." I remember seeing an interview of him on Parkinson back in the day, and he he was just a random farmer dude just having a chat, you know.
Yeah.
And then they made a movie about his life, at least 15 years ago, and he was played by one of the blokes from Sea Change, if you remember that, with Sigrid Thornton. And he was...
The TV show.
Yeah, the TV show.
Yeah.
With Sigrid Thornton and David Wenham.
Yeah,
and,
I remember that.
But as one of the secondary characters, and he played him. And I remember this part. I think the reason I bring this up is I think this might get to the essence of what we're fumbling towards. There's a moment where... In real life, he meets this young woman. So he's like 60, she's 30. They actually do get married. Right. They amicably split some years later. But at the time, she's like, really, yay, do it, rah, rah. He comes back after this run, and she says to him, what were you thinking of? Or were you thinking of the ending? Or were you thinking of this? You know, these people who are here to see you. And he just stops and he goes, no, I was thinking about you. And... he says it in a really quiet way. The camera doesn't stop. He keeps moving. There's no extra music. And I thought, if that were... I remember this thought when I watched it. I said, if that was an American movie, it would have paused. You would have had a close-up zoom. Mm-hmm. You would have had this extra music, this dramatic moment, and that's the point. And we're going to upscale the romantic element and with drama and this, and probably introduced a romantic rival, just to add this. Yeah. And he just says it and they move on. And you go, that's kind of the point of that whole scene. But it just sort of happened and they moved on. And Australian directors, I feel like, are just happy to just let the thing play out. Yeah. We don't need spectacle necessarily. Yeah. Think of something like The Castle. Yep. You think of understated. Like there are no, except for the very end where they cheer, there's nothing grandiose about that film.
Yeah. Yeah, everyday family, everyday problem or difficulty, I guess. That
the hero.
Anyone could put themselves in the shoes of the family. Yeah.
The hero is just a dad trying to keep the house safe, his castle safe. Yeah. That's it. I mean, you can go back to Mad Max. Like Mad Max 2, the most famous of them, he's like, just want to keep me and my dog in the car. Yeah. He's not trying to save the world. He doesn't care. Yeah. You'd argue it's a bit nihilistic, but he's just like, meh. Yeah. It's fine. Whereas, and then Australia it becomes symbolic as World War II kicks off. It becomes symbolic of that. You introduce Indigenous issues and the stolen generation, and I vaguely remember there was a big stampede or something, and they're rounding up cattle and all this big... huge green screen and all this sort of stuff, and so just rounding up cattle becomes a significant scene, and everything's got to be big. And I think that bounces right off us.
Well, yeah, and I don't actually know what they're trying to say with that either. You know, well, what's the real message of Australia? Just as a movie, like they've got too much to tell, really. There, isn't it?
Yeah, is it about the stolen generation? No. You want that? You go watch Rabbit Proof Fence.
Yeah, correct.
Made for an Australian market. Yeah. I mean, fair, because to be honest, what I think that is the one big criticism of Gone with the Wind, which is justified, is that it brushes over slavery, because you see the slaves going, "Yeah, we'll fight for you, the South," rah rah rah. Yeah. And because it's romantic towards the South before they lost the war. Yeah. And it doesn't say slavery is good. It just brushes over it. Yeah. So what I think is, I could be wrong, I think Baz Luhrmann said, I want to make Gone with the Wind, and I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to mention the Stolen Generation because it was happening. And sure, so he's like, I won't brush over it. So, admirable, yeah, that's good. But it's still not what the film was about. And I suppose it informs character. Maybe that's flimsy because Hugh Jackman's character is, I think from memory, like is he had a partner who was Indigenous because they call him well, I'm not using the slur, but a lover of Indigenous people and all this sort of stuff. So it informs the character, and then later on, one of his mates is killed defending the country. So yeah, there's a little bit there. But it's not really the foundation of the film. So you might be right. They're trying to plug a few things in there. Yeah.
And I feel like maybe the essence of that movie is just a little bit fake. It's not... I don't know. I don't watch that and feel, oh yeah, I'm patriotic.
No.
I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed, actually, when I'm watching that because...
Yeah.
It's not... If I could choose, how to portray a film like that wouldn't be... how I'll do it.
Cultural cringe, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I've heard the idea that if you want to sell to Americans, you don't go over brandishing, koalas and all this sort of stuff. But then again, Crocodile Dundee did that. Yeah. So, the stuff that's a bit more modest.
Wasn't trying to be serious as well, though, Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah, well, that's true.
That's the thing.
That's true. Australia took itself very seriously. Which arguably you should do if you're making an epic.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Oof. I don't know. So is the answer there if you want to... I mean, let's take the assumption for a moment that you want the American market and that's a thing you should aim for. Whether you should or not with Australian cinema is a separate question.
Yeah.
Let's say that's what you're trying to do. So is the formula there, you need to be understated and authentic, but... you got to be funny because I don't know.
Just that's probably what most movie producers and directors are still probably trying to crack their heads on, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
What do Americans like?
Because I think most successful Australian films from recent years. I think of Bring Her Back and Babadook, which are Australian-made, produced, set horror films. And the horror is not inherently Australian. So, for example, Babadook is kind of a haunted house film, basically.
Yeah.
And
I haven't seen either, so...
Yeah, well, I can speak to them just briefly, but Babadook is effectively suburban experience of raising a single mum with a kid, but then, there's a monster, basically. So it's a monster as metaphor, sort of speaks to the parenting experience and so on. Channels more of, say, The Exorcist. Like you got single mum with child, and now how do I deal with this? They play out very differently, though. But if you had made that and just set it in an American town, it could have worked. So it was Australian, but it didn't have to be. So that was, not leading with the koala and the Aussie flag.
Yeah.
And Bring Her Back was the same. I didn't know it was Australian. I watched the trailer, I had no idea.
Okay.
Then I heard about it, made by a couple of YouTubers. Really affecting film. A couple of kids in foster care. So their new foster carer, mother, is, if you're going to call her that, is pretty messed up. And some pretty horrible things happen. So... I guess in that case, you're sort of saying the fact that they're Australian is incidental. So you're playing a completely different... It's like, we're doing this American thing. It definitely feels different. So, compared to, say, a Conjuring movie where... I don't know if you've seen like Insidious or Conjuring movies or anything like that. They tend to be these slow burn... They're descendants of The Exorcist. They're slow burn things, then they build up to this thing. An exorcism, literally an exorcism, or we've got to get out of this house, or we've got to satisfy the spirit in some way, or whatever it might be. And it builds up to some pretty wacky stuff. And I guess that's probably the difference is things like Bring Her Back builds things up in a different way. So, for example, in The Conjuring is supposed to be based on real people and real experiences. It's not. It's a couple of fraudsters from the US. But by the there's people flying around because the witches grab them, and then you can see several ghosts at once, and someone flies through a window and all this sort of stuff. And that's the American element. That's where you build it up. Really, it is. And Babadook and Bring It Back do that a little bit, but not as much. So you can. What I'm saying is, you get that sense of that understatement there.
Yeah.
So if Americans had done it, you would have had a different ending, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
But I feel like we've gone two ways. You either have very obviously Australian films, and they tend to fail. Yeah. Like Australia. Or there's a lot of Australian films being made that are quite successful, but they're not leading with the Australiana. Yeah. So they kind of just integrate with the system, especially in the age of streaming. But these films found their audience and did pretty well.
Well, maybe at the end of the day, just a good story is a good story, and that's universally received. Maybe there's just too much tinkering to try to appease a certain flavour of film style. Through lack of, again, back to the lack of authenticity. Yeah. Because if you made Australia in the US and obviously changed it, made it American, it maybe could have worked. Yeah. Maybe the Americans might have liked it.
Yeah. Like if you just said, let's really sink our teeth in. You think of movies like Mel Gibson's The Patriot and stuff like that. Yeah. But that works. It made money. And it kind of works. So Australians watch that and go, fair enough, because I guess we're far enough removed from it, and go, yeah, it's all right. Because Mel Gibson was very successful at the time. Yeah. It fell at the right time. Would a movie like that land today? Probably not. There's America's got a lot going on at the moment. A real gung-ho patriotic film would only land with part of the audience. Yeah. But
it'd probably be cancelled.
Yeah. That would be an interesting test case, dropping a movie like that now. But see, Australia, we're talking 15 years ago. You're talking when America was less divided, still pretty divided. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I like the way we just pulled on some threads there to see, and I guess the idea of should we be appeasing American audiences is kind of a pointless one, because if you have a modest budget, you've got to find an audience outside. The Australian box office isn't big enough to support. Once you spend $20 million on a movie, which is not a lot of money these days, you need a foreign audience. Yeah. So, bad luck. It's just the way it is. Should we? Well, you have to. It'd be nice if we didn't need to. Because you go back to movies from the 80s and 90s, where you could make pretty big, like The Light Horseman was a big film, like hundreds of horses and all this pre-CG, really impressive film, made for about $5 million. Had some I think it was $5 million. Had some American funding in it, incidentally, so it had some promotion overseas. But that was the thing, 80s and 90s, you could still, in Australia, you could still produce a film that looked good for a few $1 million. Yeah. But this century, no. There's films that aren't necessarily grand in scale. Look at, that's all right. $20 million for that, really? And you won't make $20 million at the Australian box office on that.
Yeah. Do you think a factor as well is for Americans to be interested in a story, it has to have, something to do with them. So I think the link to the success of Crocodile Hunter was because you had an American female lead, right?
I'll take your word for it. I can't remember. Well, fair enough.
Crocodile Dundee.
Crocodile. Sorry, yeah. You're really obsessed with Crocodile Hunter.
Yes,
no, and of course
Croc Dundee, right?
And part of it's set in the US.
Yeah. Well, so that draws you in. It's like a meeting of two cultures. So it's that interesting juxtaposition there.
Yeah, and juxtaposition is interesting. It's obviously cynical when you cast an American lead, but hey, if you got to make your money, it's business. At the end of the day, think about Rogue. The people who made Wolf Creek made Rogue. A crocodile movie, and the lead, an American Tourist. You go back. Have you ever seen Razorback?
No.
Back in the 80s, it's a killer pig
No.
movie
Right.
made by Russell Mulcahy, who made a little film called Highlander. And then he came back to Australia.
Oh, yeah, I know Highlander.
And made Razorback, which is definitely not Australian, of course, but
Yeah.
he came back and made Razorback and an American lead. 100% Australian. I'm not sure about Australian money, but
Yeah.
made in Australia, Australian director, all Australian actors except for the main lead. And that says to me that probably there was some American money involved, and that's how you get it. So I could have made that movie, says Russell, I speculate, in Australia for $1 million. But an American turns up and says, I'll give you 5, but make the lead American. And you go, well, okay. And we'll help distribute it, maybe. That's a distribution deal.
Yeah.
Think of, do you remember Young Einstein?
Actually, I love Young Einstein.
Young Einstein is a genuinely good movie.
Yeah. That is a great Australian film.
That is geez, we forgot that before, didn't we? But then he makes the sequel. Do you remember the sequel?
No.
Well, not literally a sequel, but his next film was Reckless Kelly.
I remember Reckless Kelly.
And he's a descendant of Ned Kelly.
Yeah.
And here he is in Australia, but the second act he goes to America.
Okay.
And I guarantee you that was because somebody said, we'll fund this if you go to America.
Yeah.
And guess what? Act 1 and Act 3 of that movie are actually not bad. Act 2 is atrocious.
Okay.
Act 3, he dresses up in the Ned Kelly armor and all this sort of stuff. It's a comedy, of course. You don't take it too seriously. Because they just go, they're shooting him. He goes, just shoot him in the legs. He goes, right. Is it, forgot, it's just silly. And they're trying to tow away Tasmania with the big chain. It's all very silly. And it kind of works, but Act 2 is atrocious.
Yeah.
So that was, and you know why? Because that's the I need to sell it to America part.
So really, America just ruins everything then.
They do. It's all their fault. Couldn't they just give us their money and leave us alone? Yeah, I don't know. Because when I think of my favourite Australian films, they generally weren't made with that sensibility. I think of Wake and Fright, which was made for an Australian market, resoundingly rejected, nearly became a lost film, incidentally.
Right.
Like I said, the first Mad Max, not made for an American market. I don't think Young Einstein was made for an American market. It certainly doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
The Castle, 100% made for an Australian audience.
Yeah.
I don't like a lot of Australian films, but the ones I like, and you think the Australian war films, which were popular, like Gallipoli and Blood Oath and a couple others, they were not made for a foreign market.
Well, because they wouldn't really buy in or be invested or interested.
No, because what is this?
Which
is understandable. If we see something that's inherently American war film, it's rare that we go for it. Yeah, Saving Private Ryan was Spielberg, but for every Saving Private Ryan, I would guess there's, in the age of streaming especially, there's probably a dozen or two that we don't even see.
Yeah.
That we just go, we've got no buy-in, we don't care.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. You got to have something relatable.
Yeah.
Or just really well made. In the case of Saving Private Ryan, I mean, what an epic. So there you go. I think we've answered it, sort of, haven't we? What's the summary?
The key elements of Australian cinema. It's just authenticity.
Yes.
Good storytelling.
Yep. Character driven, I would say.
Yes.
Rather than situationally driven.
Yeah, because that's what I guess brings out the Australian flavour.
We get Australian flavour through character rather than spectacle or that sort of thing, or plot necessarily.
Yeah. And in many cases, I guess things that kill you, right?
Yeah. I'm surprised there haven't been more.
How well are some of those? There's that Open Sea movie. Is that the name of it?
Oh, the recent one, right?
Well, maybe 10 years old now.
Oh no, sorry, it might be a different one.
Well, based on a true story, a group that go diving and then they miss someone. Or they miss a couple, right? They don't count right, and then they're just left in open sea, and then it's just all about them.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
What a daunting idea. Just count the people as they come back on the boat. You had one job.
Yeah.
One job. I'm surprised there aren't more movies about people dying in Australia. Because we get one there was a crocodile film with John Jarratt, who was he was the bad guy from Wolf Creek.
Yeah.
There was a crocodile movie back in the 80s.
Lake Placid or something.
No. Lake Placid.
Oh, that's American. That's American.
No, I can't remember the name of it
Yeah.
now. But you get one every now and again. Then of course there is Wolf Creek, and once because he basically represents the outback, like the threat of the outback.
Yeah.
Based on a true story. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Loosely based, shall we say? Australia will kill you because that's something Americans understand.
Yeah,
they get the myth of.
I think they love that too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've only talked to a few Americans, but they always go, "Isn't everything trying to kill you there?" Yeah, we pretty much live on Nightmare Island. That's why 90% of us live on the coast. And I certainly, when I'm on the coast, I don't go swimming. Like, there's too many things in there. I would call that a successful summary.
Yeah.
I really didn't know where that was going to go. It was nice.
Yeah.
Try that and see what happens. There you go.
There we go.
So we've answered it. You got any more questions you want two geniuses to answer, send them somewhere else, but send them here and we'll give it a go, I guess. Joe, thank you very much for joining me.
You're welcome.